Hello, hello. I am so excited today to be talking about how to set yourself up for financial success when you go on vacation. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Eleanor Prisco, and I work as a money and mindset coach, and I help women build profitable businesses and also help women create profitability in their own personal lives. And what I mean by profitability in your personal life is like actually achieving the big financial goals and desires you have. Right. So the topic that I want to talk about today is all about how to set ourselves up for financial success when we go on vacation. So this is something that I obviously have been navigating and living through since I have been living abroad for about a month and a half now. However, we still have our apartment back in the United States, and we are planning to return to the US. However, we've really enjoyed obviously being abroad, and there can still be that energy that creeps in of like, this is like a vacation. This is also a topic that came up with one of my clients last week, or maybe it was a couple weeks ago, of just navigating how do I maintain the financial plan I have when I go on vacation or just have travel as like a consistent larger part of my life or business, right? Because of course, when we're traveling, we always end up, it seems, spending more, whether that be on dining out, whether that be on little like gifts or souvenirs for our friends or family or ourselves, right? Because we see like these amazing things that we have an opportunity to purchase that get us really excited and we want to, get. So instead of making ourselves wrong for all those things, we were talking about this week, how do we set ourselves up for that success? So let me know in the comments, what's the thing that kind of always takes you out? Is it more the rent of the hotel? Is it the dining out? Is it the souvenirs? Is it just shopping in these new locations and finding all these amazing goodies? Is it the experiences, right? So the very first thing that I always tell my clients when they are looking to set up a vacation is gather evidence, like gather information, gather data, like learn your own financial picture and also learn what your vacations normally look like, from a weekend getaway to a week to a month to 2 weeks, whatever it might be. But take some time to go ahead and look back at maybe some of your past vacations that you've taken and see, oh, what did we spend kind of in total? What was the hotel? What did we do dining out? Normally, you'll be able to pull this information pretty quickly because you'll know when your last vacation was, and you can just filter your credit card or your bank statement to be that window of time and just kind of total up, right? Instead of getting all nitpicky and being like, oh, well, this is what we can afford on afford for a hotel or lodging. This is what we can afford for dining out. This is what we can afford for this. Instead, take a larger look at everything and just say, oh, okay, on average, if it's a weekend getaway, this is how much we normally spend. If it's a week-long trip, this is what we spend, right? Instead of being like, oh, well, I need to have these exact budgets or this exact allotted spend per different area, give yourself permission to just like get a total and understand, oh, okay, this is about what we spend, because a lot of times we think that we spend less, right? And this is one of the things that was happening for my client in this past week. She's like, I just feel like I always end up kind of blowing my budget out of the water, or like blowing my financial plan out of the water, and then like kind of beating myself up about it. So it's like, we really want to stop that cycle in its tracks, right? We want to figure out, okay, how do we set up an actual sustainable understanding of what it looks like to go on these trips? So, I've had a lot of experience this year with doing this work along with last year. So last year is when I started traveling again. So we did 2 weeks in Europe over the summer. I then surprised my mom and we did a week-long all expense paid trip for her to Italy. And then I did a resort for like 4 nights in Mexico. And then we went to Coachella, which is like a totally different experience because it's a music festival. So you have a lot of like costs that would be different, such as like entertainment and just like the high cost of food that's going to be at festivals. However, you can mitigate some of those costs by bringing food in that you can make yourself, because we were camping. But you're going to have high costs of tickets. And then we now have taken 2 months abroad in Europe, which we're absolutely loving. And it's like, oh, well, like, how do we start to figure out what we're allowed to spend? So number one, you're allowed to spend whatever you want, right? But we do want to do it in a sense that's going to allow greater financial stability for ourselves. So the very first step, as I said, is getting to know a little bit of your regular spending on vacation. Now, you might not have a lot of data on potentially vacations, whether it be weekend getaways or a week-long trip or a month-long trip, whatever it might be. So maybe you don't have that data and you're like, well, I don't really know what I can work with, right? And so there is like a couple ways that you can go about this. So, and where you can like find the data a little bit more from looking at your spending, but then there's also a couple different ways that you can approach spending on vacation, right, to maintain financial stability. So the first thing that you can do is, like, if you have a set amount of money saved and this is what you've been saving it for, and this is the intention, that is kind of the situation that ended up happening with my trip to Italy. It was that, like, it was amazing money that I came into because I hired a new accountant and they saw that my previous accountant had made some tax filing mistakes and got me a huge refund from the previous year that I was owed. So I decided to split up that money that I ended up getting back, because it was like really unexpected money. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take some of it and I'm going to go ahead and put it towards my financial goals and intentions and things like that. And then the other part, I'm going to actually take my mom on this surprise trip to Italy because I always wanted to take her. So, like, that is one way to do it, right? With that situation, it was like, okay, I have a very specific amount and everything needs to fit into this amount. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it that might be a little bit more sustainable is if you know your financials and you're going for potentially a long period of time. Like, this is something that's definitely happened for us over taking like 2 months abroad, is that we looked at our actual living expenses when we're back in the States. So we were like, okay, well, like, how much do we spend on grocery? How much do we spend on entertainment every month? How much do we spend on dining out, right? And we gave ourselves similar financial intentions here, right? So it was like, okay, well, like, this is what we want to be spending over here in general on food, right? And if as we were going through and looking at our spending, or as I was going through and looking at my spending, one of the things that, you know, I kind of gave myself permission for is that, like, dining out was much higher than dining out back in the States, and our groceries was much lower. However, the totals of the two combined were really, really close. I was spending a little bit more, I will be completely honest with you, right? However, the thing that I want to remind you is that, like, if you combined your food categories and, like, on a travel plan, or like on, you know, a vacation, it's kind of like, oh, well, like, if I'm spending in total the same amount, it's just that the money is going in slightly different pots or like different categories. If I'm still spending the total amount as the same, then we're good. There's no need for me to beat myself up. There's no need for me to get upset with myself. There's no need for me to be like, oh my God, I'm a horrible money manager. It's just like, oh, the money was just getting distributed in a slightly different way while we've been here. And so that was like a huge aspect, I think, of that people don't think through, is like, when you are planning out a vacation, if you go ahead and look at what you spend on groceries, what you spend on dining out on average in a week, in a month, right? However long your period is that you're going to be gone, you can give yourself that same budget for vacation and maybe increase it a little bit, because there was going to be more dining out than maybe what we would do back in the States, because we're going to be outside the apartment a lot more, right? So I just want to kind of like give you permission to know that, like, oh, you do have an idea of what you spend. And one of the best places that you can start when you're planning a vacation and having it stay within your financial plan is to go ahead and take a look at, what do you normally spend on food in a month, right? Because this is one of the categories that always is something that blows people out of the water. They are like, oh, like, what, how do I know what I'm allowed to spend. And it's like, well, the way that you know is because like, go ahead and take a look at your normal spending at home. If you look at what you spend on average on groceries, if you look at what you spend on dining out per week, then that's like your allotted plan for vacation. Yes, it might be a little higher than that just because you're in a different environment. You might not have access to a full kitchen. So you might be dining out more. So then maybe you nix groceries, or maybe you just have some snack budget in there. But like the important thing is, right, is that you're actually paying attention to, oh, what am I spending in these areas, right? And then consider also like, what do you normally spend on entertainment? What do you normally spend on clothing, right? Because a big thing that happens, right, especially I feel like when we travel, is that there's always going to be like little things that we want to buy, whether that be souvenirs, whether that be clothing, whether it be, you know, going to a unique experience. It's just like, oh yeah, like what are those things? And I plan on doing like a full breakdown of what these 2 months was like for us, of just like, oh, this was like transportation, this was like all of the sightseeing we did, right? Because they can start to get really expensive. And so it's really important to go ahead and take a look and see like, oh, this is about what it broke down to, so that we can actually better plan experiences for ourselves, rather than have those experiences after the fact then make us feel shame or guilt. It's really about, you know, oh, I'm allowed to experience the financial desires I want. I'm allowed to prioritize travel. I'm allowed to go ahead and put these things into my financial plan, into my budget. And I'm allowed to experience financial success while doing these things, right? They don't take away from anything. And so a huge way to do that is to actually go ahead and be like, oh, okay, well, like, I just need to take a look and see, like, what do I spend on average in these areas? And then that's how I can map out like the starting point of a financial plan for travel. This is not to say that you need to stick to that average to a T, right? I want to be very clear here that, like, for instance, just on vacation, you always end up spending more, right? Whether it be like, oh, we forgot shampoo and things like that, or like we need to go get this like random thing, right? You're gonna end up spending more. And so it's just to get comfortable with the idea of, oh, we're going to spend more, but this is at least the base that I can expect to spend when we go to this other place. And so I think that that can set a lot of people up for greater success, because when we don't have any kind of plan, all of the spending always feels like it's like wildly out of control, right? When we suddenly, what happens with like what we owe at the end of a vacation, we're literally like, oh my gosh, how did I spend this much? Like, what was going on? And then like the conversion can get you too sometimes, right? So here it's very important for me to stay on top of my money dates while we've been traveling abroad, because, you know, conversion rate is close, but the dollar amount that I am signing off on or charging to my credit card is higher than the euro rate, right? So it's like, oh, I need to like mentally be adding a few dollars to almost every transaction. So staying on top of my money dates has been super important while I've been here. And it's definitely when like I've forgotten and I've had like a 2-week block, it has been a little harder to figure out like, oh yeah, what was that transaction? Because it doesn't match anything in my memory, because I like think of the number of like, oh yeah, we went out to dinner, it was $46, but it wasn't, it was 46 euros. So then like it actually turned out to be like more closer to 50 or 48 or something like that. So then it kind of gets a little out of sync in like your memory. So that's why also like it can sometimes be really important if you're traveling for long periods of time to keep your money intimacy up to date and just like kind of like consistent with it, and like stay on top of your money dates, because it can allow you to really maintain whatever financial plan you have, but also like not to don't beat yourself up if you don't do it, because I definitely missed mine for like 2 weeks in a row, and then I was kind of like, oh my gosh, I really need to check in with things. Another like really quick hack for you to be able to set yourself up for financial success on your vacation is like, so the first thing, right, that we talked about is like, number one, you go ahead and you get to just know what you have spent in the past on different types of vacations and maybe mirror it to whichever one you're planning right now. This will also give you a good idea if you want to save for your vacations. It'll tell you how much you need to save, right? So that's like one option. A second option is looking at your current everyday living expenses, taking those as averages for the time period that you're going to be gone and giving yourself that as a base start, right? So that's where, like, you look at your rent, you pretty much look at your monthly spending, you divide that by 4, that's how much you spend in a week. And it's like, oh, that's about how much I'm going to be spending. Of course, your housing/lodging is going to be more expensive because you're doing short term versus where you're leasing or paying a mortgage, right? But this leads me to the biggest hack of all that I think is the most important one to do when you are traveling or going on vacation, either for a short term or long term or whatever it might be, that has really helped transform my travel experience and be able to keep me on my financial plan, or just be not as like sticker shocked when I see my credit card bill, is I pay my credit card off every month already, but before I go on vacation, I pay my credit card off in full. So this doesn't matter if it's in the middle of the month, if I'm only leaving for a week, if I'm leaving for an entire month. But what I do is like a day before I'm leaving, I pay my credit card off in full. What this allows for me to do, and then I charge everything to my credit card. What this allows for me to do is I then look at my credit card rather than needing to do a full on money date and see what money I have remaining, or like see where my money is going category by category by category. I'm able to actually take a look and be like, just open up my credit card app and be able to see like, oh, this is how much I've spent while we have been here or while we've been on vacation. And so I now really know what about I need to like slow down my spending, or, oh, I can go out shopping and buy these items, or, oh yeah, this like souvenir that I've been seeing around, like I want to get, and it's totally fine, right? Or, oh, like we can go out to that fancier dinner place that we've been wanting to try that's in our neighborhood, right? It gives me a better idea really quickly with me not needing to go on a full on money date, right? Like it's you're able to have like just a quickie, like just quickly look at your credit card state, like your credit card balance, and be like, oh, this is about what we've spent. And so I know where I'm at in the financial plan, right? Because you should already be planning to have this money be able to be paid off because you're basing it on your own averages. You've maybe saved some money up, right? So it's like, oh, okay, this makes a lot of sense. The other thing that I want to give you also permission for is that I found after vacations as well, is that I actually end up making more food at home when I get home, just because it's like, you probably have been eating out more. And you know that feeling of when you eat out a lot, it's kind of like, oh, I just want some like home cooked meals, right? Like you don't want anything like fancy. And so I have seen something that's really helpful to remember for myself, and maybe this is your situation too, is that like once I get home from a vacation, my dining out is going to go down because I'm going to be making more food at home, because I will have been dining out a lot. And then my body's just like, I would prefer to just have some really nice, clean food at home. Like, not that the dining out food I'm eating is not clean, but you get me, right? It's that feeling of like, oh, I just want some home cooked meals. So that's another thing to take into consideration when you're kind of like maybe getting nervous or freaking out about vacation and how to create greater financial stability with it. Of, oh yeah, like when I get home, I might be dining in a bit more. So like me maybe having once the week after, I have like a little bit more money to spend while I am traveling because I'm going to cook at home more. So that's another thing that I've noticed as well. But the biggest hack is this one of I pay my credit card off before I go on vacation. I go ahead and then just watch the balance so that I can do a really quick assessment of where I'm at financially and be able to adhere to the financial plan or intentions that I set, or get really, really close to them, right? Because I think that that's something that's also like really important to know. And what I've been like totally shocked by is that because I've just been intentional in this way, I actually ended up spending less our first month abroad than I do normally in the US. We were in a place where like the cost of living is lower, compared to the city of Washington, D.C. that I live in now in the US. So I'm sure that also had something to do with it. But it's like we still were dining out. We did make food at home, but like we dined out way more than eating at home. And I still like bought some like lovely pieces that I was really excited about. And so I just want you to know that like when it comes to this, client lesson and this information of like, well, how do we create sustainable plans for vacation and allow ourselves to incorporate vacations and travel into our financial plan? Because honestly, if this is a passion of yours, if this is a desire of yours, if this is something that really brings you tons of joy and pleasure, I think that like it should always be incorporated into your financial plan, right? Like I never think that we should completely cut out the things that bring us joy, that bring us ease, that bring us pleasure and like our amazing experiences. I'm not saying to get into debt that way, right? And like I have so many thoughts on debt, and it's not something that we should be like shaming and guilting ourselves about. I think that we've really been set up to, shame and guilt ourselves around debt and like think that it's this really bad moralistic thing where there's actually no morality attached to debt. Like it's neither good or bad, and it's just neutral. And there's a lot of ways in which I teach how to create neutrality with your debt over in Money Academy. And also, if you want to just get a quick taste of what that's like and what it's like to shift your relationship with money, you're going to want to sign up for Money Shift, which is a free 4-day workshop happening at the end of this month, July. So head on over to my bio and snag your seat. And I would love to support you in that and be able to share with you like all this just straight up like strategy and mindset shifts that need to happen with money to create sustainable change, not only in your personal finances, but your business finances too. And then you get an opportunity to ask me questions. So the big thing here, right, is when it comes to setting yourself up for financial success with your vacations, it's really to just take a look, right? Just take a look at the data that you already have sitting, waiting for your vacations recently. Go ahead and take a look at what is your normal spending at home right now, and just give yourself an average baseline of, oh, this is the base, but we're going to end up spending more than this. And so like, what does it look like to increase that total? Use these insider tips of like, oh, this is like the secret sauce of being able to maintain the financial plan I have for my vacation. Just pay the credit card off in full, charge the things to the credit card so you can quickly take a look at what's happening when throughout your travels. I know that has been really transformative for me when I go on trips, because it gives me such a better understanding of like kind of where I'm spending money, where my spending is at, and like what I actually still have available to spend. So with that, this brings us to the end of our money chat this week. As I said, if you're wanting to do some deeper shifts around your money relationship, whether it is mindset, whether it is strategy, I'm going to be talking about both over my 4-day workshop at the end of the month. So you're going to definitely want to sign up for that, snag a seat, so that you could get access to the replays and the little private community that's popping up around that workshop. I'm so excited, and be able to ask me questions when you attend live. So go ahead, snag your seat for that. It's over in the bio, right where you know it is. And with that, I will see you next week for another money chat. Bye.